Hi there, and welcome to Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at common Magic the Gathering cards, tell you are they any good in the Pauper format or not, and we just have fun and screw around. Speaking of screwing around, somehow I've found a number of subscribers, which I'm shocked by. I kind of just did this channel for me, and now some people follow it. Not a whole lot, but we're getting really close to 200 subscribers, and that would be a cool goal to hit. And who knows, maybe I'll do something special if we get to 200. So I don't know. Let people know about the show if you are liking it and you want to see more. Let's get to our first card though, which is Searchlight Geist. 2 and a black for a 2/1 flying spirit, and you can pay 3 and a black to give this creature Death Touch until end of turn. That just seems very expensive all around. 3 mana 2/1 flyer. That is a feral. Oh, what is it called? It's not just called Feral Spirit, is it? No, it's Feral something. No. It's Feral. Feral Shadow. That's the one I'm thinking of. A 3 mana 2/1. I always remember Feral Shadow because it's part of the 3 with Breathsteel and Urborg Panther to get a Spirit of the Night. That's always fun to do that little combo with the Urborg Panther, and I love Urborg Panther. Difficult thing to say. I don't think we've done Urborg Panther on the show. When we get to it, it'll be very fun. But Feral Shadows are already pretty bad. This one is slightly better, that you can give it Death Touch eventually. But 4 mana to just give something Death Touch until end of turn. That's not great. We've got things that can do it for a single mana. Those things don't fly, I guess. But this just seems very expensive. I like the art though. The art's cool. But the card itself, I'd say it's pretty bad. I'll give this a 2, and it honestly doesn't even really deserve the 2, but we'll give it that. We'll move on to Furtive Homunculus. For 1 and a blue, you get a 2/1 Homunculus with Skulk. So similar power and toughness to the Geist that we just saw. But 2 mana is a little easier coming down. And then this Skulk, being this creature can't be blocked except by creatures with greater power. Or this creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. Right. So this can potentially sneak under some bigger threats. Usually things that have Skulk have 1 power. So it's interesting to see one that starts with 2. And also being a 2/1 means anything that has 2 power or less can block this pretty easily and kill it. One of the other nice things about Skulk creatures is that usually they have bigger butts too, so they'll be able to even survive against the things that usually are able to block them. Not the case with this one, and that's odd. But I guess this is an interesting thing to try and just test out. I wonder how well this worked out. I was not playing limited or even standard or anything really. I wasn't playing Magic during Shadows over Innistrad. So if you were playing, let me know. Was this thing kind of halfway good? I can't imagine that it was. I think this probably just ends up trading with some creatures pretty early. It is a blue creature. Blue creatures are generally not the best kinds of creatures. Now I know in Pauper we have Player and Terror and plenty in Cryptic Serpent and Delver of Secrets and things like that. So you have some blue creatures that can certainly do stuff, mono blue creatures specifically. But for the most part, these blue creatures are kind of bad. And I don't know, a two power Skulk guy seems like he would get blocked by a bunch of stuff and be very ineffectual. So let's go with I'll go with its power and toughness. I'll say a 2.1. I don't think this is very good. I mean, if it can get underneath, if your opponent just has big stuff and this goes unblocked every turn, 2 damage isn't the worst thing. But I just think your opponent's going to be able to make a token. They're going to have a wall or something, depending on the deck. They're going to have some kind of 1/1 guy or 2/2 guy, and I don't think this is as effective as you might think. It does remind me a little bit of a Savannah Lion, just being the 2/1. And the Skulk, I guess, could mean it trades a little bit better. I still just don't like it, though. And the nice thing about Savannah Lions is it's 1 mana. You get it down on turn 1. And this you can't do that with. So I'm going to stick with my 2.1 and keep on going. To Tajuru Beastmaster, which is 5 and a green for a 5/5 elf warrior ally with Rally. When this creature or another ally you control enters, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. Allies are interesting. They especially when they have these kinds of effects, and so you can keep stacking these effects as you're making more and more allies. There are cards that can make ally tokens. How many of those are in common? I don't know. I think there might be like some sorceries or maybe even instants that can make tokens, but I'm struggling to think of a repeatable source that makes ally tokens in Pauper. You know, I can think of Maskwood Nexus or something else that is able to spit out changeling tokens or black market connections. That could be, you know, that's a way of getting changeling tokens as well that would count as allies. But yeah, I think your ally count is just a little bit small in Pauper. If Scryfall wants to follow me here, I would love to search up. Here we go. Let's search up allies. And let's go legal in Pauper and see how many we're really dealing with here. That's didn't work. Why didn't it count the type line? Ally. Okay. Ally, Pauper. There we go. So 62 allies. That's a pretty decent amount. Let's also sort it by mana value. I want to see the cheap ones, the ones that are easier to get out. Yeah, I mean you've got some interesting options. The forecasting fortune teller from Avatar has been a pretty good Pauper addition lately. There's some stuff here. Allies just, I don't think it's quite there. I think it's an interesting idea. There's probably enough of them to start building a deck around, but I don't know if it quite makes it there, especially having this thing, which is a cool ability, giving a Lord boost, temporary buff to all your creatures is nice. An anthem effect. That's what I'm looking for. A temporary anthem effect to all of your creatures is nice whenever you're getting another ally on the field. And this doesn't trigger just once per turn. So if you're able to put multiple allies on the field, that's a pretty solid buff you're getting. But you are spending 6 mana for what is otherwise a vanilla 5/5 creature here. I don't know if that's quite enough to really write home about. And even if you were to make an allies deck, I don't think you're really going this high in the top end, unless your allies deck is also able to ramp incredibly well. And I don't think the allies that would ramp you are at common. I think those go into higher rarities. Interesting, though. Interesting. I'm going to give it a 2.5. And that's probably a bit high, but hedging my bets just a tiny bit. Mist Moon Griffin feels like something we've done before. Let me make sure. 3 and a white for a 2/2 flying Griffin. When this creature dies, you exile it, then return the top creature card of your graveyard to the battlefield. Yes, we have done this one before. Really interesting card from Weatherlight, so a much older card, which cares about the order of your graveyard. I tend to just not like any of these cards, so I have the freedom to shuffle my graveyard and not worry about it. But if you are going to play a card like this, you have to make sure your graveyard stays in that specific order. Them's the rules. It used to be that your graveyard had to stay in a specific order all the time, and now we've retired the mechanics of really caring about order of graveyard. So it's only in these cases where something might be used again. You're using old cards, and once you actually put one of those cards in your deck, you then have to start caring about it or start paying attention to it, because that will be a rule that gets enforced. I don't think this is a great reason to to force your deck to do that. It is still kind of interesting. 4 mana 2/2 flyer isn't amazing, but it is a threat, I guess, worth considering for your opponent, and that when they kill it, when they decide to block it, when they decide to cast it down, that you are able to get something back in the process, which is kind of nice, but it usually allows your opponent to choose when that happens. I guess you can have sacrifice effects and things like that that will that you can trigger whenever it's most convenient to you. I don't really love it. I don't remember what I gave it a long time ago, but why don't we give this thing? I am going to give it a 2.6. It does reanimate. Like it is kind of cool that it just reanimates a thing, and you could potentially stack that in a way that is very advantageous for you. But white just has other ways of bringing back creatures from the graveyard, and I think those are generally probably better. Generally. Next is Barrington Crag Treads, which is a fantastic name. 2 and double hybrid Azorius mana, so white or blue, and then a white or blue, for a 3/3 Kithkin Scout, and this creature can't be blocked by red creatures. Can't be blocked is okay, but at this point, I think, especially if you're already paying 4 mana for it, just say protection from red. I think that'd be a little bit better, or it certainly would be a lot better, but it would be something we might consider playing in a Pauper deck instead of something that we would, I don't know, who cares? Because this kind of color hate, you really only going to put in a sideboard, and I don't think the effect here is enough to make it warrant sideboard play. You know, a 4 mana, basically vanilla 3/3, nothing to write home about. And I don't think you're as worried about red creatures. I mean, I guess you are, and they're playing gutter snipes and other goblins and things like that in most of those red decks. But my problem isn't really that the red player's going to block me. It's that they're going to lightning bolt me. And this card is extremely lightning boltable, regardless of its ability to get around red creatures. I think this is actually pretty bad. The hybrid mana, I guess, helps it to be played in multiple kinds of decks, but I really don't see any deck that wants to play this. So I'm going to give this thing a 1.6, I think. This one's pretty disappointing. Daru Cavalier is 3 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier with first strike. When this creature enters, you may search your library for a card named Daru Cavalier. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle. That's not too bad. I mean, we see Squadron Hawk with things like Caw Gates, and that's a way of getting more cards back from your library. This cantrips in a way, and you can chain it from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And, well, then you can't do it anymore because you only had 4. With Squadron Hawk, you can get them all at one time, though, which is really nice when you're able to use that with the combination of Brainstorm and like a Lorien Revealed to be able to put a couple of them back and then shuffle them away. So then when you play the next one, you're able to get that card advantage back into your hand again. You're not going to do that with Daru Cavalier. And I'm not sure a 4 mana 2/2 with first strike is so good that I want to be able to tutor up more copies of it. It's still nice that it does basically draw you a card, and it does shuffle your deck, I suppose. So those are potentially nice things if you need those. But I just think what you get on the field isn't all that impactful. A 4 mana 2/2 first striker, I just think it needs a little bit more. Even with like one extra point of toughness, I would have been a little bit more amenable to this. But yeah, I think this overall is just a little bit disappointing. I do really like Onslaught. I like the creature type matter stuff that Onslaught does, and so I respect a card like this. But I'm not seeing any real Pauper play that this thing could potentially get. Let's go with a 2 points. I'm still going to give it a 2.9. You know, it's a halfway decent body, and it does draw you a card, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good to cantrip that way. Still not amazing, though. Dugara Scavenger is 5 and a black for a 4/6 crocodile. When this creature enters, you may put target artifact or creature from your graveyard on top of your library. How do we feel about this? 6 mana, 4/6, basically vanilla after its enters trigger. 6 is a great toughness. It blocks a lot of the scary creatures out there. Not Cryptic Serpent, but pretty much all the other ones that you really need to worry about, outside of like a Monstertron deck. So I don't hate that. I don't love paying 6 mana for it though, and you don't get a reanimate effect. You don't even get a raised it effect. This goes to the top of your library, and that gives your opponent a chance to, I don't know, mill it back off the top of your library or make you shuffle your library in some way. It requires you not to be able to shuffle your library, which can potentially be bad if you're trying to play with fetch lands or something too. You've got to make sure you order your triggers in the right way, or you order your sequencing in the right way, so you're not screwing yourself over here. And I guess it does help you get that next card, but it also slows down your tempo a little bit by forcing you to know what your next draw is. You're not going to get an additional card, right? And that can feel kind of bad. I like it, but I don't love it. I don't think it really has a place. I think it costs a little too much, and I think once it's on the field, it's okay, but it's nothing to really write home about. This isn't. I don't see where this is moving a game plan forward. I could see it slowing down an opponent's game plan, but not really furthering your own. And that is a bit of a cardinal sin in a format that is so much about accruing value turn over turn. So for this not to be able to do that is, I mean, I suppose if you have 2 of these, they can start getting each other back and looping if your opponent is killing them. But because it's putting it at the top of your library instead of putting it back in your hand, if your opponent is just killing them turn after turn, you are like losing the tempo because you're losing what your next draw would have been if you keep looping these guys. Yeah, I'm souring on this quite a bit. I'm going to give this thing a 2.4, I believe. Ooh, we got Alaborn Musketeer for 1 and a white. It's a 2/1 human soldier with reach, which isn't very good. I like the art. That's all that is. But I do like the art. I like this giant musket here. That's a fun design. Good job, Heather Hudson. This is kind of nothing. You could put it in White Weenie, I suppose, but there's enough white creatures with flying that you would play over this. It is a soldier. I guess that can help you in some cases, but no, this is nothing. It's just way too vanilla. We're gonna go with a. I'm gonna give it a 2. I usually give Grizzly Bears around a 2, and while this is not, doesn't have the toughness that a Grizzly Bear does, it does have reach. I'll make those offset basically. I think reach is basically worth a point of toughness. Champion of Arashin is 3 and a white for a 3/2 dog warrior with lifelink. Anytime you see a lifelink creature at common, you're always thinking gates. Gates are a really good package with lifelink creatures. You're buffing your creature up hugely, and then you're taking back all that life, and that's pretty nice. The problem is this one is expensive. 4 mana. Yes, it does start at 3 power, which is nice, and the gates are only going to buff it further. But you play the really cheap creatures with lifelink, like the Sacred Cat or the Outlaw Medic, because then the lifelink gets boosted already from the gates package, from the Basilisk Gate. So you don't need a good starting power with your lifelinker. You're going to generate a bunch of power because of all the gates that you've gotten. So this is just kind of wasting a bit of time. This comes down much later on the board. It's still very boltable by red decks. I think Arms of Adar also would take this thing out. It's pretty. I do like the art on this one too, but I think ultimately it's not all that good. I don't really love lifelink on these creatures once you're, because now it feels like I'm really paying for the lifelink, whereas on those cheap creatures it feels like, whoa, bonus lifelink, that's really cool. On this guy, it's like, wow, I felt like I really paid the cost for it. It's like 4 whole mana to get a lifelinker down. That just feels too expensive to me. So I don't really like this one. I'm going to give it a... I think I'm just going to give this thing a 2. I think it's okay once it's on the board. It's just spending the mana to get it on the board is pretty bad. I don't think it's bad enough that it needs to dip down into the 1s, where I think I think the card is just actively harmful. But I do think it's basically the bottom of the barrel on normal Magic cards to play. What do we got for our last official card of the day? It is Thassa's Bounty. For 5 and a blue, you get a sorcery that says draw 3 cards and target player mills 3 cards. You know, if we ever lost Lorien Revealed, which I don't think we will. I don't think we're going to ban Lorien Revealed, and I don't think we're going to ban all Universes Beyond cards, as much as I might like to. I'm trying to think of like what mono blue terror would play if it didn't have access to Lorien Revealed, and we have that answer. I can't remember the card name off the top of my head, but MTGO has a terror deck that, like a starter terror deck, when you give them, I'm not on MTGO, but I know there's like a, hey, I want to do a starter Pauper thing, and it'll give you this deck, and it doesn't have Lorien Revealed in it, but it has something else that draws you 3 cards, and maybe a Island Cycles for 2 or something. I'm not sure. This also draws you 3 cards, and the milling 3 cards is pretty good too in a mono blue terror deck. But the problem is Lorien Revealed is so good because it has that island cycling. Specifically, it has that island cycling for 1. So you are able to do, it basically functions as land in that at that point. It's able to shuffle your library when you need it. That's a deck that also plays Brainstorm. So like the Coggates thing that I mentioned earlier, you're able to play your Brainstorm, put a couple cards back that you don't want on top of your deck, and then Lorien Revealed, or cycle the Lorien Revealed to be able to shuffle that library again and make sure your top of your deck is potentially useful to you again. Those are the nice things about that, and this card has none of those. This is just a very expensive sorcery, and you're only going to be able to play that in the late game. It's still a pretty good card to play in the late game. Drawing 3 cards and either making your opponent mill, or for the mono blue terror deck, you're probably going to mill yourself to keep the instant and sorcery count in your graveyard high, so you can use more of your Tolarian Terrors and Cryptic Serpents and things like that. But this is okay. It's okay. It just doesn't have a home right now, and unless some big thing changes, I don't think it's ever going to find a home. So we'll give it a I'll give it a 2.7. Yeah, 2.7 seems about right. But if Lorien Revealed ever went out of the format for some reason, I guess this would bump up a little bit. We probably still have better options than this. Let's do one bonus card and then call it a day. Oh boy. Phantasmal Dreadmaw, 2 and double blue for a 6/6 dinosaur illusion with trample. And when this creature becomes the target of a spell or ability, you sacrifice it. Man, I want this card to work so bad. It seems so cool. Just a 4 mana 6/6 trampler. That's just a really good rate, fantastic rate. But there's just so many ways of targeting this creature, and accidental ways for you to target your creature. You don't want to put this in a Gates deck, because once you try to target it with the Gates, it will sacrifice itself. That's pretty bad. But more often than not, your opponent is going to hit this with something. It doesn't. It's pretty bad when your opponent's what is it? Not Lava Spike, but just the 1 mana guy. The 1 mana guy that you can then flashback by sacrificing a mountain. You can just do a single damage to this guy. You can shock this guy. You could lightning bolt it if you wanted to, and just by targeting it, you don't have to kill it. It just makes this thing's not going to last on the board. And I think we have enough ways of targeting creatures that are pretty universal. You know, if we're playing against a Bogle's deck, they could try to target this with an enchantment, with one of their own auras, and this dies. It's so fragile. It's just so fragile. I don't think it works. But man, it'd be cool if it did. It really would. I'm gonna give this a 3.2 just because I think the ceiling of this card is so high. It's scary high. But it also, every time you play this, you're going to be sweating bullets, chewing all your fingernails off, wondering if this thing's going to stay on the board or not. And if you're able to keep this on the board, awesome. So awesome. But even if you are, it's probably not going to last very long. What a great dream. I'll go 3.2. I love Phantasmal Dreadmaw. I have 4 copies. I've considered finding a way to put it into a deck and just see if it works. I should try that sometime, but I'm pretty sure it wouldn't work. Thanks for joining me on this one. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya.